the empath detachment phase, when you finally stop caring. Hello and welcome to Veronica's Journal, where we discuss spirituality, psychology, and mental health. So together we evolve as a community that's unstoppable. How are you guys doing today? I hope you're doing well and you're safe and protecting your energy and your peace during these turbulent times. Today's topic is based on some recent notes from my journal. So everything I speak about on this channel comes from my journal. I only talk about things I have a first-hand experience with. You know, when I've been there and done that kind of a thing. Yeah. My goal is to help people through their personal journey. So instead of learning it the hard way, you can learn from my experiences. Also, towards the end, I'll give you my spiritual take on the war in Iran. So make sure you stay with me till the end. So without further ado, let's get started. So you see, there's a phase that many empaths go through that no one really talks about. It doesn't happen at the beginning of the relationship. It doesn't even happen during the worst parts of the conflict. It happens much later, after the exhaustion has settled in, after the arguments, after the confusion, after the constant emotional roller coaster. And it's called the empath detachment phase. This is the moment when something inside you quietly changes. You stop reacting the way you used to. You stop trying to fix every problem. You stop chasing answers from someone who never intended to give them. And the strangest part is, it doesn't happen with anger. It happens with calm. For a long time, empaths are deeply emotionally invested in the people they really care about. They try to understand them. They try to see things from their perspective. They try to give them the benefit of doubt. Even when something feels wrong, they do. Empaths are wired to connect emotionally. That's part of their nature. But in toxic relationships, that same empathy often becomes the very thing that keeps them stuck. Because manipulators know how to use empathy. They know how to trigger guilt. They know how to pull on your compassion. They know how to make you feel responsible for their emotions. So the empath keeps trying to explain, trying to heal the relationship, trying to bring things back to the way they were in the beginning. But slowly, something starts wearing down. Not the empath's kindness, not their compassion. What wears down is the illusion that if they just love harder, communicate better, or understand deeper, the other person will eventually change. And once that illusion shatters, the empath detachment phase begins. It usually starts quietly. You might notice you're not as emotionally reactive during conversations. Things that once triggered intense frustration or sadness now feel strangely distant. You might still care about the person, but their behavior no longer shakes you the way it used to. And this can feel confusing at first. Some empaths even worry that something is wrong with them. They think they're becoming cold or heartless. But that's not what's happening. What's actually happening is emotional self-protection. Your mind and nervous system are recognizing that the emotional investment is no longer safe. So instead of continuing the cycle of hope and disappointment, your system begins pulling back. This is not loss of empathy. It's restoration of boundaries. And this phase can feel very strange for people who have spent their entire lives being deeply emotionally responsive to other people. You might find yourself observing more than reacting, listening more than explaining, stepping back instead of stepping in. Where you once felt responsible for fixing every conflict, you now feel a quiet awareness that the problem isn't yours to solve. Now, this is a powerful shift, but it can also trigger reaction from the other person. Because manipulators often rely on emotional reactions to maintain their control. When you react strongly, they know they still have influence over your emotional world. But when your reactions disappear, something changes in the dynamic. The manipulator senses the distance. He might not understand exactly what happened, but they can feel that their usual tactics aren't working anymore the same way they used to. And when that happens, their behavior often shifts. Some will try harder to provoke you. They might push your buttons more aggressively, hoping to get the reaction they used to receive. And others may attempt sudden kindness or affection, trying to pull you back into the emotional bond. Sometimes they will play the victim. They might accuse you of changing, becoming distant, cold, or not caring anymore. And in a way, they're right. You have changed. But this change isn't cruelty. This change is clarity. The empath detachment phase isn't about shutting down emotionally. It's about redirecting your emotional energy back towards yourself. For years, many empaths pour their emotional resources into other people. They invest their time, attention, compassion, and patience, often without receiving the same level of care in return. But once detachment begins, the empath slowly starts reclaiming that energy. They begin asking different questions. Instead of asking, how can I fix this relationship? They begin asking, why am I still staying in a situation that's draining me? Instead of asking, what did I do wrong? They start asking, why am I being blamed for someone else's behavior? And these questions are the beginning of self-awareness. And self-awareness is incredibly powerful. Because once you see this pattern clearly, it becomes much harder to fall back into it. Another interesting thing happens during the empath detachment phase. Your emotional tolerance for chaos begins to drop. Situations that you once tolerated for months or years suddenly feel unbearable. The constant drama, the unpredictable mood swings, the emotional manipulation. Your nervous system starts craving peace instead of intensity. And that craving for peace becomes stronger than the desire to hold on to the relationship. This is often when the empath begins creating real boundaries, not temporary ones, not the kind that get pushed aside when guilt appears, but firm boundaries that protect emotional well-being. And boundaries reveal something important about the people around you. Healthy people will respect them. Manipulative people will challenge them. So, during this phase, relationships often start shifting. Some connections grow stronger because they were built on mutual respect. Others begin to fall away because they depended on imbalance. This process can feel lonely at times because when an empath changes their boundaries, the social circle that once surrounded them may suddenly start to change as well. But what's really happening is a filtering process. The people who valued your kindness but respected your limits will remain. And the people who relied on your unlimited tolerance will slowly disappear. And while that can feel uncomfortable at first, it's actually one of the healthiest transitions an empath can experience. Because detachment doesn't mean isolation. It means discernment. It means learning the difference between compassion and self-sacrifice. Another powerful aspect of the empath detachment phase is the return of intuition. You see, during toxic relationships, many empaths learn to ignore their instincts. They second guess themselves. They override their inner voice just to maintain harmony in the relationship. But once emotional distance appears, that inner voice begins getting stronger and stronger again. Start noticing red flags much earlier. You start trusting that uneasy feeling in your gut when someone's behavior doesn't match their words. You begin recognizing patterns instead of isolated incidents. And this restored intuition becomes one of your greatest strengths. Because intuition helps you protect your energy before situations escalate. Instead of being pulled deep into toxic dynamics, you can now step back early enough. And the more you trust that inner guidance, the more peaceful your life becomes. It's true. One of the most misunderstood aspects of empath detachment is that it can look like indifference from the outside. People who were used to your emotional responses might interpret your calmness as coldness. They might say things like, "Oh, you don't care anymore," or "You've changed," or "You're not the same person you used to be." But what they're really noticing is that the emotional access they once had to you is no longer unlimited. Your empathy still exists. Your compassion still exists. But now those qualities are guided by wisdom instead of obligation. You're no longer giving emotional energy to situations that repeatedly harm you. And that shift is a form of emotional maturity. Because empathy without boundaries becomes self-destruction. But empathy with boundaries becomes strength. As the detachment phase continues, something else begins to grow inside the empath. Self-respect. Not the loud, defensive kind, but a quiet inner confidence. The kind that says, I deserve relationships that feel safe. I deserve communication that is honest. I deserve peace in my emotional life. Once self-respect takes root, your entire relationship landscape begins to change. You start gravitating towards people who value mutual respect. You become less tolerant of manipulation. And most importantly, you stop abandoning yourself to maintain someone else's comfort. This is one of the most powerful transformations an empath can experience. The empath detachment phase is not about losing love, okay? It's about rediscovering self-love. It's about realizing that your emotional depth is a gift, but it should never be used as a tool against you. And when you finally understand that, something remarkable happens. You begin forming connections that are healthier, calmer, and more balanced. Relationships where empathy flows both directions, not just one way. Where kindness is appreciated instead of exploited. Where emotional safety replaces emotional chaos. And once you experience that kind of connection, you realize something very important. The detachment phase wasn't the end of your empathy. It was the beginning of protecting your empathy. Because empathy is not meant to be endless emotional labor. It's meant to be shared with people who respect it. So, if you're currently going through the empath detachment phase, if you've noticed yourself pulling back emotionally from someone who once had a strong hold on your feelings, take a moment to recognize what that shift actually means. It means your awareness is growing. It means your instincts are returning. And it means you're learning to value your emotional energy the way it deserves to be valued. And that quiet shift, that calm sense of clarity, is often the moment when real healing begins. And this brings us to the end of the video. Now, I'll share with you my spiritual insight on the war of Iran. Totally unrelated, but I'm going to talk about it. In my earlier videos, guys, I've told you how our physical world is governed by the spiritual world. Things always happen in the spiritual dimension before they manifest in our physical dimension. Each and every one of us has been under spiritual warfare for a very long time now. There is a battle for your mind, your soul, and your consciousness. The archons, the interdimensional beings, these beings are constantly manipulating and controlling our reality. And people in power are just puppets for the archons, as we've all seen in those e-files. These archons feed on loosh. What is loosh? It's the energy created through human suffering, which is their source of food. The more suffering, the better is the loosh energy. And wars create a lot of suffering for millions and millions of people at the same time. The Bible talks about the devil is here to kill, steal, and destroy. And that's the spiritual reason for wars. Their main goal is to divide and conquer. Humanity needs to wake up. Wars affect everyone around the planet because we are all interconnected. I've said this before. We all bleed red, whether you're white or brown or black or yellow or whatever. The only way to destroy the archonic agenda is for us to be united and to live in harmony with each other. That's the only way. Okay, guys, I'm going to end this now. Let me know if you want me to make a longer video on this topic. Smash that like button, share it with one other person, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. Have an awesome day. Take care. Until next time, guys. Love you all.